Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Mirasol webinar. Today we'll provide an exploration update on our Sobek and Inca copper gold projects in Chile. Just some quick introductions. My name is Troy Schultz. I serve as Vice President of Investor Relations. Leading the presentation today is Tim Heenan, President of Mirasol, as well our Executive Chair, Patrick Evans, will start off the presentation with some opening remarks. Following the presentation, we'll open up the lines for your questions. As a reminder, the presentation is being recorded and all of the lines have been muted. I will now hand it over to Patrick.
Thanks very much, Troy, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Mirasol webinar. As Troy mentioned, the primary purpose for today's webinar is to update you on our two flagship assets, Sobek and Inca Gold. Apologies for the slightly late start. We had a bit of a technical problem. My camera doesn't seem to be working. I've told Troy and Tim that will add to the quality of this webinar. So apologies for that slight technical delay. As I said, Tim's going to be talking about our progress at Inca Gold and Sobek. Just by way of introduction, would like to remind everyone that we introduced Sobek to the shareholders less than 2 years ago, on November 4th, 21. In a very short space of time, from not having put a foot on the ground before then, we've advanced Sobek, frankly, at extraordinary speed, taking it through 2 field seasons, constructing a camp, constructing an access road, and successfully completing our maiden exploration program at the Sobek Central project. By any measure, I think that's it's an extraordinary achievement on behalf of Tim and the exploration teams in Chile, and supported by the exploration team in Argentina. The same thing about Inca Gold. We've moved incredibly quickly, advancing drill targets at Inca Gold. And as we announced recently, we're going to be drilling the Vanya targets there this month, which is very exciting. Inca's at lower altitude, about 2,200 meters than Sobek. Sobek's in the high Andes, and we're limited to the summer seasons to be able to drill there. So we should have some exciting news coming from both of those projects. Drill results from the first 2 holes at Sobek Central, and then also the drill results from our Vanya target at Inca Gold. Now, beyond those 2 flagship assets, and they're clearly our flagship assets, the fact that we're drilling at them, it supports that. I've always emphasized to shareholders that Mirasol is an extraordinary company. We have an incredibly rich portfolio of high-value projects, both in Chile and Argentina. You're all familiar, of course, with our Virginia Silver project in Argentina, a high-grade silver deposit. Tim and his team are now taking it through an updated NI 43-101 resource statement. We'd like to see the resource there grow quite considerably from the previous historic resource, perhaps above 20 million ounces of silver in a very well-established, active mining district in the south of Argentina. Elsewhere, key projects, of course, Ruby. We announced last week that we're busy flying an MT survey over the Ruby project. It's not the focus of today's presentation, but I think Tim will probably mention it. We expect to have drill targets from Ruby as well. It's a very short distance from Inca Gold, and also at lower altitude, so it's something that could be drilled year-round. But then particularly exciting are the Coronation, Altazor, and Gorbea projects. These are copper porphyry targets in Chile. We've worked very hard, and over the last year or so have been successful in regaining 100% control over those key projects. All of them have drill-ready targets. We had partnered Altazor and Gorbea with Newcrest. Newcrest spent a great deal of time and money advancing exploration on those projects before they got cold feet about Chile and decided to pull out. So we have 100% control over those copper porphyry projects, and they have drill-ready targets. And then most recently, we were very fortunate to be able to get back 100% control over the Coronation copper porphyry project. It's immediately to the west of First Quantum's Van der Waal discovery, apparently a mine-scale discovery we've heard, immediately across the border in Argentina. We have as well, thanks to the efforts that were put in by First Quantum, we have drill-ready targets at Coronation, and we're hopeful that we're going to be able to advance drilling at those projects during the next field season for the High Andes, which will start in September, October this year. So with that being said, I'm going to hand over to Tim, and he will give us a more detailed update on progress at Sobek and Inca Gold, and once he's completed, I'll make a few comments about some of the trading in our stock recently. Thank you, Tim.
Okay, thank you, Troy, for the introduction, and thank you, Patrick. I couldn't agree with you more. You know, obviously, I'm going to talk about Vanya and Sobek today, but there is so much embedded value for the shareholders and the other projects we have behind the curtain at the moment. So it's really important to put that out there. I'm fully convinced there is a discovery in this portfolio, if not more than one. Mirasol, can everybody see the screen? Troy, can you confirm that's up?
Yeah, that's working.
Okay, good. Mirasol, focused on discovery as we always have been and will be for going into the future. I just put up the cautionary statement because there will be some forward-looking statements in this presentation, so you can look at that on the website. I think everybody online today, and I appreciate you being here, I think everybody's fairly familiar with Mirasol, so I won't dwell on this slide too much, but I want to pull a couple points out of here that are important. And I think mostly, we are focused on that highly prospective and mine-friendly jurisdictions of both Chile and Argentina. You can see our little man up here focusing towards those two countries. We've been there for so long, even prior to Mirasol, we were there, the founders. So we've got a really strong, established in-country permitting and operating experience, which is such an advantage in those companies. You'll see we're well funded on the next slide, and we're currently involved in active drill campaigns at two of our flagship projects in Q2 and Q3 of this year. And apart from that, we've got extensive exploration programs for the remainder of 2023. So just quickly looking at some of the finances here, the share structure and treasury. As I said, we're well funded. We did a financing in June to the tune of 7.4 million. So considering our last financial statements, 10 million in the bank. We've maintained that conservative share structure, even though we've done another financing. We're at 65 million at market cap due to a kind of a low share price at the moment. It's around 56 million. Directors and management still hold a good portion, 30%, and institutional investors are around 9% at the moment. Flagship self-funded, which I'm going to talk about, and Patrick did mention many of the pipeline projects on the right side of the screen. Our self-funded ones are up at Inca, particularly Vanya, up at Sobek, and also Patrick did mention Virginia down in Santa Cruz of southern Argentina. Today, I'm going to concentrate on Inca and Sobek. So let's get right into Sobek. And I think it's important to start from the beginning. Our targeting and staking rationale there at Sobek was we were looking along the trend of the entire Andes mountain chain, and what we're looking for there was gaps in the metallogenics in areas where there were no few advanced projects and mines, and there should be, looking at the geology. So this was one of the gaps we looked at, and hence today That's where Sobek resides. If you look on the right here, what we're looking for is those trans-orogenic structures coming through from Argentina over into Chile. That existed. We have good geology in this area, good strong alteration. So that was an area of focus in that gap. Looking here, that was our first staking back in 2016. There wasn't a lot of ground available back then, but we've grown considerably since. So that was in that gap. Now, if you look at that gap today, it's obviously shrunken considerably. Now we're looking at the well-known Vicuña district in that gap. And of course, that's that giant copper gold district, largely due to the work of the Lundin group of companies over the last 15, 20 years in that area. You can see here on the screen our Sobek portfolio in yellow. Over on the Chilean side, the dark gray is Chile. So just looking at where we sit, we're about well, actually it's 3 kilometers now with our new work up at Potro in Sobek North. We're 3 kilometers west of the new Lunahuasi discovery by NGX Minerals. That was previously Potro Cliffs, and as many of you saw yesterday, the name has now been changed to Lunahuasi. At Sobek Central, we're about 7 kilometers west of Filo del Sol, and of course Jose Maria to the east, and of course Los Helados on the Chilean side up to the north. So this is the Mayo-Pliocene age mineral belt in northern Chile. We've managed to put a large portfolio together. We've grown it since the early days. It's 100% owned by Mirasol. It's not encumbered in any way, and we're continuing to look for ways to continue to grow our portfolio there. We're seeing strong evidence, obviously, for existence of porphyry coppers and high sulfidation epithermal gold systems in our property. This was, as I mentioned, staked based on that prospective geology and that good structural architecture in the area. And this is high Andes. Our Sobek Central is over 4,000 meters, but I call it easy altitude because it's only a 3-hour drive in from Copiapó along a paved highway. And then we come in a 40-kilometer road to the center of our property, and it's a well-maintained gravel road. So, you know, it is high Andes, but it's easily accessible. Before we even set boots on the ground in Sobek, we did a property-wide high resolution. It was almost 2,700 line kilometers of helicopter-supported aeromagnetics. And that was completed by Nusense out of Santiago, who do a bang-up job. So that really improved our understanding of the local structural architecture. It obviously defined multiple highly prospective targets, both lows and highs and magnetic linears. So that really helped us. And we're currently following all those up even as we speak today, resulting in a significant advantage in this emerging district. So that was really a good way to start off in Sobek. Today in the Vicuña district, you can see this is a cartoon map of the main players in the area. The black line separates Chile and Argentina. So you've got all the Lundin group of companies up there. NGX was Jose Maria, Los Helados, Lunahuasi, and Filo del Sol. Barrick is in the area. Codelco has got a large block in the area. That's the Chilean state copper mining company. Socomich is in here on the Argentine side. NGX, obviously, Filo Mining, Mogotes, which is a new player in the crowd. It's called Mogotes in from Australia, moving that project forward. Further south now, Pan American Silver has picked up Las Fleches from the takeover of Yamana. So it's a pretty darn busy area and not much room to wiggle there. I just want to give you a visual, and this is actually Sobek Central. On the left side of the screen here, we're actually looking to the northeast from the southwest. All the hills in the foreground are Sobek Central, and then Filo del Sol resides in behind us here up along the Chile-Argentine border. The access to Filo is actually up through this valley. That's the Chilean access anyway. And then over here on the right is the prospects we've defined to date at Sobek Central, and there's a lot of them. At the bottom here in the lower altitude, we've got the CLP zone, which is short for collapse. This is a collapsed area here, and it's got some interesting geochemistry in it. Our central breccia. Up at higher elevations, we have our VN zone, and that's VN is actually vetas negras in Spanish, which means black veins, and that's the black and white magnetite quartz rich veins that carry gold and copper in a typical Maricunga type porphyry. Strong structure here on the north side, hosted in the sediments. We call that the green wall because it's strongly mineralized with copper. It's a fairly narrow structure injected into the sediment, somewhat similar to what we see over here in Greta Verde zone, which means the green seam. That's got a little bit more gold in this seam here, but the green wall has really, really high copper results. Probably not a target on its own right, but it's certainly sourcing these high copper values from somewhere. It's focusing us to depth. It's vectoring us down below these. So hopefully the source of that copper is from one of our prospects that we're currently working forward. Talking about the VN zone, our original anomalous gold samples in rock chips up here were around the gram and a half, and generally below 1,000 ppm copper. You can see in the petrology sample here, there's a little bit of native gold in those quartz magnetite veins. And the recent forays up to the area, we've been able to pull off samples of up to 5 grams gold now and 0.22% copper. So that's really getting encouraging up in that area. And, you know, it was difficult to get up there. We now have a road that goes up there so that we can properly explore this come spring. That's going to be our focus. In the overall here at Sobek Central, now this is looking straight down on it. This is northwest to southeast. Here is our central breccia. Here's our CLP zone, and the VN zone is actually about 1.5 kilometers upslope to the south. This is actually a soil grid that we've been working on and continuously expanding. We're currently expanding it to the east and further to the south, and we want to eventually get up and cover up as far as the VN zone. Now, just what you can see, these are soil samples on a controlled grid. What we're seeing on a global basis here at the central breccias, it looks like a copper halo, and then a polymetallic suite of minerals as well associated on top. That soil grid and the copper anomaly in particular seems to be getting larger and more consistent as we move to the southeast. So that's interesting, and the associated mineral and the element polygons continue with that copper. At the northwest here in the collapse zone, basically copper and some gold, but what's really interesting here is this red polygon, and these are actually moly rock chips, and moly is really, really high in this zone, so that's really encouraging to see those kind of results that close to that on surface. Now, if we look at the pictures on the right, that's kind of a typical picture of the green wall structure that comes in here, strongly mineralized, narrow, generally a meter, less than a meter, sometimes a little bit over, but it's a narrow structure. And this picture here is just on the rim of the collapse zone, and it's got anhydrite and gypsum veinlets and stockworks, which sometimes is characteristic of the carapace of an intrusive center at depth. So a lot of interesting characteristics coming out of our current work at Sobek Central. We did complete a mobile MT survey that gave us multiple targets. This was a really useful survey, and the topography is very challenging at Sobek. So, you know, we were pretty well forced to go in there and fly this, and the MT did a super job. So just showing you a little bit about the MT responses we got at Sobek Central. I've just simply called them MT response 1 and 2, but they're clearly oval shaped MT responses, very strong. When you step back, these are really, really clear. Usually MT responses are showing you resistivity and electrical conductivity, and they can map out subsurface down to a considerable depth. So these are what we're interpreting as representing intrusive centers at depth. And you can see we're developing a bit of a cluster here. So if you look at where we just did our first 2 holes, our first hole was under the central breccia, and the second hole was just on the edge of one of these new MT responses. The central breccia hole went down to 352 meters, and our second hole at on the edge of the response, got down to 560 or 586 meters, and we had to pull out due to winter was upon us. So both of those holes are going to need follow-up come our next season. The core samples from that drilling are currently in the lab, ALS lab in Chile, and those results are expected to be out around early August. And also the VN zone over here is going to be the priority drill target once we get back in the spring. What I want to note here, and it's really interesting, is all three of these current areas occur on the cusp of these MT responses. So I find that interesting. We actually found the VN zone, putting our road up the VN zone north, coming into the VN zone. The road actually cut a swath here and exposed some good looking veins along the road cut. So at the north zone, we've got gold results up to almost 1.4 grams per ton, whereas here at the main vein zone, the new high grade results have come in at 5 and 4.5 grams gold, several multi-gram samples coming out of there, and up to 0.22% copper. So that's really interesting. So drilling should resume in September or October, which is the South American spring. So we're looking forward to getting back up in there. Now, I said we'd done work elsewhere apart from Sobek Central. This is actually our stream sediment anomalies. We do stream sediments across the entire property and all the drainage systems. And this was that campaign. And you can see Sobek Central has got a good geochemical response in stream sediments. Also up in Sobek North, it's coming together very nicely. We've got a strong anomaly here in the southwest corner. And I think more importantly, we've got a strong anomaly in copper, gold, and silver, and we're starting to find out why in the southwest corner. Now, this is where we've picked off some new high-grade results just recently from that. You can see from the pictures up here, both of these with the chalcopyrite and pyrite and the coarse molybdenite that's hosted in the quartz monzonite intrusive. These intrusives look to be younger than the surrounding host rock coming in, punching through the older rock. So that's really encouraging. But over here in what we're now calling El Potro East, we're getting some interesting gold and silver results, what I'll show you in a slide or two. But you can see that rock is very different. There's no veins in here. It looks more like a high sulfidation type of alteration, advanced argillic with silica, a little vuggy. So that's just recently been sampled, and we do have some interesting results. I'll show you them here. With the MT survey, I had a few kilometers left over from the main Sobek Central block, so I sent the chopper over to do, I think it was 8 lines in total over at our Sobek North, and we did have good success in my view, because we've defined another oval MT anomaly, and I think it's quite significant because you can see here, and you heard this maybe yesterday on the NGX webinar, the zonation of these systems. Now this to me is starting to come together like that. This oval MT response to me is representing an intrusive body rich in copper and moly. So we got 0.65% copper, 105 moly here, 55 moly a little bit north. We don't have a lot of information, but we're starting to get some, and it's enough to start making some maybe high level conclusions. Up higher at about 300 or 400 meters higher over here, which I'm now calling El Potro East, the geochemical signature is completely different, and it's gold and silver. So that to me is looking like we're in the higher part of a system, getting up into the high sulfidation levels of the system. So we've potentially got a buried intrusive with base metals, and off to the rim or even on top, we've got the more high sulfidation type of geochemistry, which is really, really good to see. It's early days here, but with the information we are getting, I think I can make those broad statements, and it's going to be obviously a focus when we get back in there. This was just a small block of MT. It was only 13 square kilometers, and as you see, we did get that high gold and silver, so that'll be another priority drill target for the 2023-24 season. Just a couple of shots here because the road at Sobek was a challenge, and it took a long time, and it took a lot of money. You can see it zigzagging up the hill here. This is the two holes we've just finished, one below the central breccia, another one higher up. Those are both drilled south. That's the central breccia. The road went up and wound around. It's currently up there. We had to stop because of snow and freezing. So come next season, we'll just have to add on that 200 or 300 meters left to get over here into the VN zone. So we're looking forward to getting up into there and putting some holes into that zone. This was just a shot of the drill pads going into the central breccia. So the road was a challenge, but we just about got it done. So obviously exploration at Sobek continues at a fast pace. We're currently not working up there because we're right smack in the middle of winter, but we're looking forward to getting back up there soon. Winter's not that long. We worked until the 15th of June, and we're looking to get back up there by mid-September anyway, so winter's not that long. It's really important up here to have a strong relationship with the local communities. We have one, and that relationship is continuing. We left the camp in over winter, obviously, to be able to move quickly in spring, but the camp was put down at a low altitude at 2,100 meters, and that's about 40-minute drive into our project. So that's good that, the exploration crews can come down and sleep well and eat well at 2,100 meters and then go back to altitude each day to do the work. As I showed you, we got that heli-supported aerial mobile mag survey completed. Sampling and detailed mapping continued and will continue when we start up again in spring. We got that maiden drill campaign done with the two holes for about 950 meters. So coming up in the next season, obviously we're going to complete that access road up into Sobek Central so we can get up to the VN zone. And we're also going to clean that road up going into North Sobek in El Potro, where I showed you those nice samples of the copper and the moly and the recent gold samples. So that is Sobek in a nutshell. We got a lot done. There's lots more to do, and it's shaping up to be super interesting in my view. And you see what our neighbors are doing across in Argentina. So it's an exciting place to be involved in. Second project I want to talk about today is Inca. That's a copper gold project in Chile. It's down actually in the Paleocene belt of northern Chile, so it's at a lower altitude. This is a large property. It's over 16,000 hectares, and it's actually an earn-in agreement with Newmont. Now, we're earning into a Newmont property here. It's something we don't generally do it at Mirasol. We will do earn-ins if it's for district consolidation or a spectacular opportunity, and I put this one in the spectacular opportunity category, so we took this one on. We're seeing evidence that copper porphyry, IOCG, high epithermal sulfidation potential as well. As I mentioned, it's low altitude, so we can work that all year round. It's got lots of mature, close by infrastructure. It's a well-endowed, world-class copper district. Here you're up in the El Salvador district, about 35 kilometers to the north. Down here at Inca del Oro, the Codelco porphyry. Off to the west, Santo Domingo, and further west, Mantos Verdes, the IOCG, and Capstone is putting Santo Domingo into production as we speak. A little further to the northeast, the Potrerillos district, and then down here you're getting up into the Maracunga actually. So it's a pretty happening area. It's been obviously El Salvador has been worked for the last 150 years. So how did this all start at Vanya? As I said, Newmont, this is Newmont property. This was their work. They actually did some ground mag and some geochemistry. So they did a ground mag survey, defined some good structures, defined a nice magnetic depletion zone that's cradled within that structural configuration. They put some geochemical soil lines across that area, returned a good gold anomaly and a nice annular pathfinder anomaly. So that was starting to look pretty good. I said, if I can put some electrical geophysical lines across this target and something lights up below, it's going to represent a strong drill target. And that's exactly what I did. That's exactly what we did. And our geophysicist is very, very pleased with the results. This is the plan view, so you can see our magnetic depletion zone coincident with the geochemistry and the structural configuration. This is the draping of the IP down below. So our geophysicist has picked out several characteristics, both in the chargeability and the resistivity, that look like valid targets. Maybe some things that look like diatremes or plutonic targets. Down here, you've got a plume which looks like a diatreme, and it's got depleted chargeability, probably relating to silicification. Coincident, maybe pyritic halos to a porphyry system. So lots of good targets came out of our IP at Vanya North. Now moving on to Vanya South, this is a new target, and that came out of the reprocessing of the original Vanya Newmont ground mag. So our geophysicists reprocessed this information, and actually Vanya South popped out where previously we didn't see much of a response down here. This high magnetic source came to be, and also another one that didn't look as strong, but we continued to process, and the end product looks very, very intriguing. So you've got here some good mag low bullseyes. You've got nice magnetic high donuts around these. That's very typical magnetic configurations for Chilean type porphyries. You can see the 3D vertical projection of that body to depth. So you've got a well-defined body. So Vanya South is looking very strong. We've done a fair amount of work on Vanya South as well over the months. This is kind of a combination of all the work that's been done at Vanya. So you can see we've got Vanya South and Vanya North. Those are our drill ready projects, our prospects that we'll be drilling here, hopefully within the weeks to come towards the end of July. But we had early Newmont geochemistry in the soils. All 4 of the targets I'm going to talk about here are concealed under transported cover. These do not stick out of the ground, so we're using geochemistry and geophysics to define the prospects. So you can see lots of ground geochemistry and soils. Black lines represent the Quantec IP. The white represents the in-house Mirasol geophysics IP, and the yellow lines are the extension of the Newmont soils that Mirasol has done to strengthen all of these targets. You can see down here in the inset, that is Vanya South. There's a big chargeability anomaly out to the east. That may be the pyritic halo to a concealed porphyry, or it could be something that stands on its own. We'll see. At Vanya South, just a real quickie on the geophysics. Obviously, this is the draping below of the IP. This is resistivity in this case. You've got 2 structural domains here, geophysical domains, the vertical stuff off to the west and the more sub-horizontal here off to the east. We think the sub-horizontal is the most important in this case. This is just a cartoon of the potential. That's the magnetic source at depth that could represent the porphyry. So you've got this nice layering, sub-horizontal layering, which is very typical in lithocaps on top of Chilean porphyries. In the chargeability, you can see that it's much more subtle, but you can see the chargeability lines flattening, which is apparently as well very typical. The chargeability out to the east, no chargeability to the west, but it could have been down thrown or up thrown and eroded because there's a big structural block there, obviously. So the geophysics in Vanya South is looking very good as well. So just looking at the prospects on an overall basis here, the coincident geochemical anomalies that we have, you're seeing here at Vanya North, there's a nice cluster of geochemical anomalies right over the original target. Down here at Vanya South, with the original Newmont lines and the extensions that we did, another cluster of geochemical anomalies. Out to the southwest here, we've got a new target called Vanya Southwest, another geochemical target there. So those 2 are the ones we're going to drill initially because they're all ready to go. We did extend the Newmont mag with our in-house magnetic team, our geophysical team, and it turned out really well. So what I was targeting was that new geochemical anomaly out in the flats over here, and lo and behold, we got a nice magnetic low, relatively coincident with that geochem on surface, and it looks like it's nicely hosted with an east corridor. There's also another one up here with a chargeability halo on its edge. So that's looking really attractive as well. So we're moving those ones forward, but we're concentrating at the moment on Vanya South and Vanya North for this maiden drill program that's coming up shortly in Vanya. So just kind of going back to some of the geophysics, I talked about that sub-horizontal layering. We did in-house IP across Vanya East, and lo and behold, we're getting that same type of high resistivity. In this case, it's really resistive. It's plus 10,000, which is extremely high for resistivities. And that horizontal layering continues to the north. So now we've got over 2 kilometers of strong IP response in both Vanya South and East. So that sub-horizontal layering continues. So I think what comes to me here is if we are successful with our drilling at Vanya South, obviously Vanya East is looking very attractive. So that'll be our first target. I'll just show you what we're thinking of doing here. And this is planned for the end of July. We're working hard to get, we're ready to go in a month's time, maybe a little bit less. Up here at Vanya North, you remember the geophysical profiles. The first hole is going to test that deep plutonic target. This is resistivity here, and that will also test these chargeability highs. So that'll be the first hole to test Vanya North. At Vanya South, there's that projection of that magnetic body going to depth. And we've also got a resistive neck from the electrical geophysics. So that's a good coincident anomaly between magnetics and resistivity. So we're going to test that as well. So that'll be our first 2 tests at Vanya. What we're trying to do here is see if a hydrothermal system does exist at these 2 targets. If it does, we'll obviously be reactive with our drilling, but we're just setting out to see if all the information I've put together is actually going to be reflected in a hydrothermal system below the gravels at both of those targets. Patrick did mention Ruby. We did fly mobile MT at Vanya. We just finished 2 days ago. These are the flight lines. You can see I've tightened the lines up to 100-meter spacings over the main targets and 200 across the rest of the property. Ruby is about 25 kilometers straight north of Vanya. And at both of these targets, we're looking for targets below cover. So this system MT is really, really good at that. They can see through the gravels and detect targets at depth. At Ruby, if you remember from our drilling with a couple of years ago, we found a really, really strong alteration zone. We had the focus, so that's why we did the MT. And here at Vanya, obviously, it's going to bring into light our southwest target, and it's going to be good information to move forward with phase 2 drilling at Vanya and future drilling at Ruby, obviously. So just looking at the exploration and the drill campaign, just to kind of summarize the IP, geophysical surveys, the on-ground IP were complete at Vanya South and North. We expanded that soil grid, the DSG samples, which means deep sensing geochemistry. That coverage was increased, as well as the rock chip sampling outboard from those anomalies. We've been following up, obviously, anomalies from day one, and we'll continue to do that. The new IP on Vanya East was just completed, and the mobile MT survey recently completed, as I just showed you. So the plan, obviously coming up, integrate the results from the survey and mostly the MT into the existing database and continue to prioritize those drill targets. So drilling is scheduled at Vanya towards the end of July, within a month's time. So pretty exciting time. So the upcoming catalysts we're looking at, it's obviously the drilling at Inca, the Sobek drill results. We're looking forward to getting those back in early August. Drilling will be resuming up at Sobek in September, October, come spring. And then Patrick did mention we are incorporating the new results into the existing 2016 resource estimate at Virginia. We've got 10,000 meters from our previous partner at Virginia to incorporate in a new resource. So that updated resource for Virginia will be coming out probably mid-September, late September. So all kinds of catalysts coming down the pipeline. So it's an exciting time here in Mirasol. Patrick, before we go into a question session, I believe you wanted to do a few more remarks.
Yeah, thank you, Tim, and thank you for that presentation. I mean, like everyone on the call, Tim, anxious to see the drill results from the first 2 holes at Sobek Central. As you mentioned, we'll get those at the towards the beginning of August. Again, I want to just congratulate you and your team, Tim. As I said in the introductory comments, in less than 2 years, you advanced from no feet on the ground to the maiden drill campaign in the high Andes. I don't think that any company has ever advanced a project in the high Andes with that speed and success. Everything, of course, was done safely. So congratulations to you and your team. And for the shareholders on the call, I'd just like to mention that I've walked the ground with Tim and his team at Sobek, Vineyard, Inca Gold, and also at Ruby. And the prospectivity of these projects is extraordinary. As Tim has highlighted, we're in elephant country, and I think that the hard work that's been put into these projects to advance them is going to deliver the results that the shareholders are hoping for. Just before we go to questions, just one last comment from my side. Trading has obviously been challenging in the last couple of weeks. The market generally, as you all know, is pretty weak. It's in part the time of the year. I think it's in part just an investor strike when it comes to junior mining stocks and senior mining stocks for that matter. In the case of Mirasol, there appears to be one active seller who's trying to get off a position. That's unfortunate in a weak market to have to face that as well. But the flip side of that is it provides us with an opportunity to increase our positions ahead of what Tim has described going to be a period of strong news flow over the course of the next few months. So thank you very much, Tim, and again, congratulations to you and your team. With that, I'll hand back to Troy.
Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you, Tim and Patrick. I'll now open the lines to any questions. Feel free to unmute your line or type in any questions into the chat box, and I'll read them out. Here's someone, but not
catching that. Lots of echo.
Okay.
I didn't catch that, Troy.
No, neither did I. I'm not sure if that was a question or if they didn't realize or not. Okay, I have a question on the line. What is the spring drilling window at Sobek Central and Sobek North, and will we drill Sobek North in the spring?
Yeah, the window for drilling up at Sobek, hopefully we can get in there by late September, early October. And as you saw, we drilled through until June 12th this year. So we've got a long season. We obviously won't be drilling Sobek North in the springtime, but I can see a possibility of drilling at just after Christmas in the first part of 2024. But we've got lots to do up at Sobek Central as far as drilling goes between spring and the end of the year.
And just maybe some comments on, I think this is in relation to the lithium with Chile. Do you have anything to say about the other commodities?
Okay, with the recent privatization of lithium, is that what we refer to?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Lithium is a non-concessionable metal in Chile, so the government can privatize that, whereas they can't privatize any of the other metals. So there's no fear in the same thing happening to copper, gold, silver, or other metals in Chile, because they are concessionable. The people that own those mining properties have 100% secure rights to those. Lithium's a different strategic metal for the country.
Yeah, there doesn't appear to be any more questions at the moment, but thanks everyone for joining us today. If you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to give me a call or email anytime, and I'll be happy to patch you through to Tim or Patrick as needed. And I guess that for today, that concludes our webinar. So thank you all.
Yeah, thanks everybody for taking part out of your day to listen to our story. Really appreciate that, and we're certainly open, as Troy said, to receive more questions if you have them down the road.